And if you want to hit record, then we can get going. And just to say, my name's Louisa. Welcome everybody. We'll do some introductions in a minute, but just a bit of housekeeping. Matt's going to record this session, and please mute if you're not speaking, but there will be lots of chance for you to all join in. I hope you will, in the last sort of segment of this hour. So we're going to, just in terms of the agenda, we're going to just introduce the panel, and then Matt and I are just going to have a little bit of a chat about the lovely book and what's in it, and then the panel will have a bit of a discussion, whatever sort of comes up. It's all very casual today, and then we'd love it if you have any questions, whether or not you've read the book, about what's coming up for you. That would be great. I thought, as I felt sort of quite inspired when I just looked at this before today again, and it's got a picture of a heart and a head. And so I just thought, as most of us spend most of the day in our heads, we'd start this little hour just by going to our hearts for 30 seconds and just spending a few seconds recalling a happy memory. And just taking a few deep breaths, recalling something happy. Okay, so now we're in freedom to be happy mode. I'll just introduce myself. My name's Louisa Pau. I'm going to be hosting today's event, and very delighted to be here. I run coaching and mentoring programs, mostly for business owners, and my mission in life is to help them not do what I did, which is burn out and become very ill, but to have healthy, growing businesses and healthy, happy lives. So that's me. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. Nice to see some recognisable faces and some new people. Yeah, so I'm Matt. I suppose most important job is I'm a dad. Got 2 little children. I'm a data geek, and co-founder of the Happiness Index, and had all this data rattling around, so I thought better write a book on it. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Matt. Rob, what about you?
Hi everyone, I'm Rob Whelan. I work as a management consultant for Deloitte, working with clients on this field. As a side hustle, I'm also training as a psychotherapist, and I have joined the panel today to talk about work and non-work happiness.
Thanks, Rob. Clive, what about you?
Hiya. So I've had a 30-year business career, mainly in corporate organizations. And the last 15 years or so, I've had my own coaching business. And I am the neuroscience advisor to the Happiness Index. And I'm sure we'll come back to that. Great,
welcome. And Christine, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. So yes, I work at ASOS. I'm a rewards analyst. I'm quite new in this field of work. I do have a passion for employee well-being and especially financial well-being in the industry. So yeah, it's great to also start off by networking with others in the field, and I believe that's a great way to get to know this industry a bit better. By networking with others creates more of a community and engagement. So yeah.
Thanks, and hopefully we'll definitely have a chance to all chat and give our input later. But Matt, if I could start with you, and you'll need to unmute yourself.
It's, by the way, everyone, I'm in a bar, and Ray Charles has been played in the background.
So you're looking very festive there with the Christmas tree.
I feel very festive. I'm on holiday.
So the relevant song there, Matt, is "Take These Chains from My Heart." Happiness theme.
Oh, brilliant. I wish I could sing that to everyone. But everyone would log off straight away.
So Matt, why on earth do we need a business case for for happiness?
I think, Louisa, I think that's such a really good phrase, like, why on earth do we need it? Because we shouldn't really, should we? And I think the reason I wrote it as a business case is because my inbox on LinkedIn and because I share a lot of content around like employee happiness, I get a lot of people that contact me actually that are really unhappy in their careers. And they don't want anything from me, but often I will get pages and pages of emails and messages just telling me about how they're treated at work. And I kind of think that's great that people come to me, but I also think it's quite sad in a way that they've had to come to someone that they don't know. And sometimes it is good to speak to someone that you don't know, but there's so much stuff that's in there. I think this stuff that you are telling me is stuff that should be discussed internally, but for whatever reason, they don't work in a culture where that they feel that they can. And lots of people believe in like a happy workforce, but I thought what happens quite a lot is people get energized by like some of the stuff that we put out of the happiness index, and then they go back to their office and then they say, oh, we should start doing all this, and they just get dismissed straight away, like, or ignored, or it gets put in the fluffy bucket. I don't know what a fluffy bucket looks like, if it is as big as a fluffy bucket, but I thought I wanted to kind of like bring together all the like the science, research, philosophy, and I think philosophy is really important, has a really important part in business, which can get dismissed as well. I think philosophy, data science and everything should go together along with storytelling. So I just want to get it all into one place. So if anyone's on here today and they believe in this stuff, but they're getting arguments back, at least they've got the top level data. Like a classic would be, oh, happy people don't work very hard. I get people, CEOs say that to me all the time. And there's some really good data in there around happiness and how you're more productive. So straight away it gets rid of that argument, but that's just one of the thousands. The funniest one I experienced recently was someone saying that they didn't want to set a precedent for happiness. like by having it, and I still don't know what to say about it. I still have no answer to that other than it's blown my brain and we can't work together. But I just wanted to make it a scientific argument because I think ethically you should be thinking like this anyway, but let's get the science behind it. So that's where the business case bit came from.
What in terms of the science, what was the most sort of interesting bit of science that you discovered when you were sort of researching the book or that's in the book?
I mean, I've banged on about this so much, but only because the start point has taken me into wanting to understand it deeper. But it was the work by Christopher Lowry that got reported by everyone's favourite newspaper, the Daily Mail, about 10, 15 years ago, where they found that in soil, there is a bacteria that has the same impact on the brain, operates in the same way as Prozac. And what it does is this bacteria in soil triggers serotonin off in your brain in the same way that Prozac or antidepressants do. And I wanted to meet Christopher Lowry and speak to him because I wanted to get beyond the Daily Mail headline and actually find out. And the deeper you get into it, and I can't wait to get the experts in, including yourself, Louisa, into this conversation. But the more you look at this stuff, you realise that this kind of thinking of us as individuals on our own, not connected to the rest of the ecosystem, and what I mean everything in that, like our colleagues. Well, it's probably unfortunate that Christmas tree's probably been ripped out of the ground and put behind me, but we are so connected to nature and how important it is for our health and happiness, and that work has a big part to play on that. And even since we recorded the first one of these in the UK, there's been a massive office announced in central London that's going to have trees and stuff in it. So I found the nature stuff the most interesting around biophilia, because the book's about how emotions have been like blocked out of work, but so's nature, hasn't it? We build these like massive buildings and put human beings in them as far away from nature as we can get them. So yeah, I got really obsessed with that type of stuff, but loads of it. That was the most enjoyable bit, is meeting all these experts and going into their research.
And you cover a really broad range of topics. So, you know, the beginning of the book, you go through, or you can see I've got lots of Post-it notes on my version, Matt. That at the beginning of the book, you know, you cover the Stoics and philosophers, and you bring it right through to, you go through positive psychologists and neuroscience. So I'm interested, you took such a sort of broad brushstroke, but do you think we've forgotten some of the sort of ancient wisdom that, you know, humans have known?
There's a really good TED talk, and I'll circulate it by Dame Shirley. I don't know if anyone knows her. Her nickname is Dame Steve, and I'll explain why her nickname's Dame Steve. But she came over on the kinder transport after before World War II, and she set up this massive technology company that became worth hundreds of millions, and that it was 100% work from home female workforce, and it also had employee ownership in that company. And someone interviewed her the other day, and they said, well, all this stuff that you were doing in the 70s and 80s seems like well ahead of its time. Like, the company even became illegal when the equal opportunities law came in, because they were only employing women. So they were like the flip way round, like they actually had to hire some men. They had the reverse problem in technology. But I think she made a really good point that every generation has to relearn a lot of stuff. And I thought, actually, that her saying that made a big impact on me, because I think actually the best place for this book is in schools, is in primary schools. Yeah, I do think we are learning a lot. And the book, you're right, the book goes back to like China in 500. But also we need to just go back each generation and relearn it. And I think we probably need to we've got this amazing thing called the internet, haven't we? But we're probably not very good at actually sharing stuff with the next generation. So it's a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question, Louisa.
That's okay. And I'm interested also in, because we've done one of these together in the UK, but you've now been on quite a book tour and all around the world. So I'm interested to know what you found engaged people in the different countries. Was there a difference between different parts of the world in what kind of got them from this book?
Well, the reason we talk about happiness and not engagement is not that we don't think engagement is important. Engagement is. We just think it got forgotten. And it's really hard to talk about the global data, because there's massive differences in engagement. But in terms of happiness, it's the same. Like Pixar, this is why Pixar is so successful, because they spent so much money researching global emotions. And that's why there's that amazing film that's just about emotions. I don't know if anyone's watched it, but they actually go into the brain and they watch the emotions going on. So it's also really difficult to do this section and answer this question without getting into stereotypes, like national stereotypes. But there are random funny things about taking this around the world. Like, we haven't done the Germany one yet, but in no other country, no one has sent me pre-questions in. I've already got about 20 pre-questions from Germany for the Germany one, and we've been everywhere in the world, but no one else. And I haven't messaged it differently. I haven't said, oh, can you send in your questions early? The Danish one was interesting, and I know Rob spent some time out there, so we'll speak about that in a bit maybe. But one thing we learned when we started taking the happiness index into the Nordics is you don't have to explain the why. Quite often, like if we were in America or something, we have to explain why this is important, and then you go through the science. Like that part of the meeting, the first time we did it, was just like, why are you explaining this stuff to us? Like, it would be like saying that you should like have a glass of water in the day type stuff in a normal pitch. So just, and they have their own words for it and all this kind of stuff. The interesting one was South America as well, in Brazil. That went down really well. And I think the South American people that attended, I going back to your point, Louisa, have we forgotten some of this stuff? When it was the South American one, I would say they have lost the least of this, if that makes sense. Interestingly, they've got the least amount of data on it. But maybe they've got the least amount of data because they don't need the data to show themselves this stuff, that like spending time with other people that isn't just work is important and things like that. So it's been absolutely fascinating going around the world and talking about this book, because it's been totally different in every place.
I wanted to pick up on what you were talking about on emotions, because you talk about emotions obviously in the book. And I think sometimes people think there's almost like a kind of cult around happiness, that means you've got to be happy all the time. And if you're not happy, then you're not part of this gang.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe that, but I wonder what your view is from the data and what's in the book about that.
Yeah. And I think this is a mistake a lot of people make, is they see high happiness as good and low happiness as bad. The way that I see it now is I just see it like a weather report. Like if you watch the weather the night before and it says it's going to rain, you take an umbrella. If you live in like Canada and it says it's going to snow, you get your snow chain thingies on. You can tell that I don't live in a snow country. There's snow chain thingies, and so on and so on. You know what I mean? Like if it's sunny, you bring your sun cream. But when people look at happiness, they try and make it like revenue or profit. Like generally high revenue is good, and if it's dropping, it's a bad sign. But I don't see happiness like that. And some people do. There are a group of people in the happiness kind of industry that think that everyone should be happy all the time. But I just don't think that's a healthy point of view based on data. And I don't think it's a sustainable way walking around the office telling everyone they need to cheer up. I don't think it's good for performance, and I don't think it's good for mental health. So there's definitely differences in that. But I think the key message is just to see happiness as an information point. I talk about it as a data point because that's how I see the world, but that's not how everyone else sees the world. I just see it, everyone needs to see it as useful information that can help you make good business decisions or life decisions, but then also be aware of your biases, because the emotion that you might be experiencing might be about something that you might have not have met someone from a particular type of background, and then you interview them and you feel uncomfortable, and it might actually not be some like secret gut thing telling you that that this person is not going to be good in the company. It might actually just because you have some kind of bias in there. And I went to a really good conference last year in Denmark, and there was this professor from Cambridge there, and I didn't understand why he was doing his presentation was called "Why Science Fiction is the Most Important Thing in the Entire World." And as soon as someone's put something like that, you've got to go, haven't you? Like there was all this other stuff going on. And his point was the reason science fiction is the most important thing in the world is because it gives us a safe place to test out stuff without offending other people. So like the classic examples he would using would be like things like Star Trek, where a human being has a relationship with a robot and stuff like that, because you can, once you put something into a science fiction world, or whether that's like Lord of the Rings or whatever, you're talking about fictional things and people that are not necessarily human beings, so you can play out these scenarios. So yeah, I think it's really important to look at happiness as just an emotion, not as a good or a bad thing.
Well, it'd be interesting to bring in other people's view on that maybe in a minute. Just to end this sort of section, Matt, I'm wondering, since you've written the book and since you've done the book tour, what's changed for you? Have you implemented anything in the business differently or in your life as a result of writing the book?
Oh, good. I mean, the first thing is, I think I said writing the book made me unhappy, and I'm just being honest about that, which is probably not what you need to hear. But because I was still doing my day job, I had to do this in the evenings at weekends. And like, I didn't realize this, but Fred kept coming up to me and asking me if he wanted to play. And I kept saying I was too busy. And then when I finished the book, I asked him if he wanted to play, and he told me he was too busy. So I was like, so that's the first bit. The second bit that I'm working on really at the moment is diversity of our board, because the founders of the Happiness Index, which make up the board, are 3 white men. And we took the last chapter, which is heavily influenced by Clive Hyland, who's will come in a bit, is around quantum. But one of the cornerstones of quantum is diversity. But even in ourselves, we don't have a diverse board. So one of the things I've been working on with the board is what we call a quantum board. And Clive said something about the chair position, which is the problem with the word chair is it's static, isn't it? And the challenge that I've been facing, which I've been really honest about, is that we work in 90 different countries and we've got a board of 6 people. So how can I represent every country on that board? How can I represent every customer? And so on. So I've actually got something that I think is really exciting that I'm going to present to our board that I think overcomes some of those like structural issues on how you can make a diverse board without suddenly having 15,000 people on your board. Because even you look at India, like where we've just launched, like how many different socioeconomic backgrounds, religions and everything are in India. And I think we've got something quite creative on that. So I've been really conscious. I'm conscious of 2 things, that we have to look after our people at the happiness index, because we can't be talking about happiness and then we don't have we don't look after our team. And then we can't be talking about things like quantum but not delivering on ourselves, because there's nothing worse than hypocrites in the world. So that home life is making sure it's balanced and that I'm happy myself, and work life is, I've put out these pretty big things around quantum. How the hell do we make sure that we are living up to what we're talking about in this book?
Great. I look forward to hearing about that. Shall we move on to the rest of our panel?
Let's bring these superstars in, Louisa.
You've mentioned quantum a few times, so I feel like if Clive, if you could maybe just talk about what is this and what does it have to do with business and with happiness?
Okay, a nice simple subject to wrap up in a minute or so. But yeah, fundamentally it's a reference to quantum physics and what we're now understanding in terms of the nature of the universe, and with it the nature of humanity itself, because they're inseparable. And the basic proposition is, well, it's not a proposition, it's now established in quantum theory, which is that, you know, at the subatomic level, we're all connected. All people are connected. We're energetic forces, interrelate to each other and impact each other. So the direct relevance is part of this process of rediscovering what humanity is all about. You know, I put a lot of store by neuroscience. That's taught me a lot about the way that the brain works and the body works and all that stuff. But eventually you get to that point where you have to go outside of the body as well to understand how we interact. And that's where the physics comes in. And interestingly now, we are seeing on the one side, quantum physicists talking almost in the same language, certainly in the same principles as people on the spiritual side. So actually things are coming together, whereas quantum physicists will talk about oneness of the universe. You can imagine people in a religious or spiritual space will talk about God, for instance. So whereas, you know, up until recently, those disciplines were going in totally different directions, we're now establishing convergence, and that's opening up a whole new world of understanding of humanity. And that literally gives us the opportunity to make, excuse the pun, a quantum leap, to really step forward in understanding of humanity. And just one simple example, I hadn't heard Matt's comments there about the organization. So traditional thinking in business is you start with thinking about the organization first, and you think boxes, okay? So even Matt himself is saying the board, and the board implies a box that you've got to fit people into. With this new approach, it's saying get rid of all the organizational assumptions and think about the way that people connect. Think about the causes that they connect with and how you create communities around those causes who want to contribute and who want to perform to achieve those causes. And it's a totally different approach. And it's scary, obviously, for traditional businesses, because they'll think, if I haven't got a hierarchy, I haven't got control, and I'm supposed to have all the answers. But this is saying, hold on a minute, we're flipping that now, because what we understand to get the best out of people, it's about leadership, creating an environment where people can grow and perform. And it's really taking the people-centric concept and taking it absolutely to heart.
Thank you, Clive.
I hope that's a useful 2-minute version.
Yeah. Christine, I'm interested what you think of that as a rewards analyst. What comes up for you hearing what Matt and Clive have been saying?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. I feel just from the experience I've had that, you know, I've seen the difficulty of engaging, you know, people in the company with initiatives and, you know, just things to get people inspired. And like I've having a couple of discussions also with Matt in regards to this. I also believe that it's important for the company to listen and really show that they care for the employees. I believe that, you know, when we feel that we're aligned with the purpose of the organization, we know what we're working towards. I feel that really drives and helps to engage others in the organization. So just also like with the work that I do, and I mean we basically regarding pay and it's related to, say, performance. you know, I think it's good for leaders in the company to and managers to really have good relationships with their teams, you know, regularly engage, you know, encourage like feedback, you know, on people's performance, really encourage them to grow. I think what keeps us, you know, at an organization, and what keeps us there, what keeps us happy is really being challenged, feeling like we're challenged in the work that we do. It's stimulating. There's opportunities for growth and career development. I think, you know, these are really important factors that really help us and help employees to stay engaged and to stay, you know, enjoying their work and enjoying the organization that they work for, like knowing what is the purpose of the organization, how are they contributing to that vision, to that to the goals, and celebrating achievements with their team, with the people that they work with, celebrating those small wins to reach the bigger goals. So yeah.
Rob, what view do you have? What's inspired you about this wonderful book?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that. Just to reflect on what Christine, I think, is rightly saying there, and it kind of complements Clive's point of view about if we are going to move towards organisations where, you know, we're doing mission-based squads and all those sorts of things that are synonymous with some of the ideas Clive's posing in different analogues, to do that and to have people working more openly, you absolutely need to have a combined mission, as per what Christine's saying here. It's like any human being, if you've got no set of values and you have no personal ethos or aim with your life, you're just going to do random disorganized things all the time because you have no anchoring on what you're for. And the same is true of organizations. I think Christine's bang on the money there. To answer your question, what inspired me about the book, there's a bit, Matt, where you speak about emotions, which you raised earlier, and there was a documentary on Netflix about a coach. I've not seen what that documentary was, but
it's about Serena Williams' coach.
Great, thanks. And there's an excellent bit in there which you quote where the coach is quoted to say, "The problem I had was I was letting my emotions make decisions for me." And I reflected on that a lot because the way I'd reflect on it, we spoke about whether happiness is a good thing or to have all the time earlier, but I think it'd be helpful for us, especially at work, to rebadge emotions a little. So instead of having good emotions and bad emotions, have easy emotions and difficult emotions. There's some things that are really helpful at work. For example, sometimes in the right context, righteous anger is an excellent thing. You're seeing someone do something inappropriate in the office, someone is being bullied or overlooked. That bit of rage or that bit of discomfort is really helpful. Or if you're prepping for something and you're panicked because you're not ready, that will give you the impetus to do the extra work, to turn up and be in the right place on the day. So I think it is worth us thinking about happiness at work, because I'm here because I'm an advocate that happiness needs to be much more at the forefront of people's agenda, but also there needs to be something at work where we let people bring all their emotions to work, but in the right way. And that's where this quote from the coach is really important. It's, you have to accept your emotions and welcome them, but not panic and let them do the knee-jerk reaction. You need that pause for breath with them to use them usefully.
Rob, just as a matter of interest, in neuroscience, we refer to survival emotions and thrive emotions. That's the equivalent of your, positive.
Thank you.
Because what people have to understand, every emotion was evolved because it has a purpose either to protect us or to enable us to grow. There is no such thing as a bad emotion, which sounds strange when we know that some of them give us a really hard time, but there's a reason for that. And that's what's part of the acknowledgement, is understanding why that emotion is being triggered.
How do organisations sort of allow that? Because I find that you know, especially in leadership, they're the sort of worst culprits because they're hiding their emotions. They think they have to be wagging their tails all the time to motivate staff. So they themselves, in a way, are not great role models for this because of understanding when it's appropriate to share with the staff or with your team, and when not to.
I think Louise, if we just borrow the data on this for a second, because I'm in a really unique position where we've got the data, but lots of CEOs of our clients send me their company update videos that they do like this. So they'll send it over and they'll say, oh, we've just fed back how people are feeling. What do you think? Like, and there's some people go complete down the comedy route, some are really serious and all this kind of stuff. But if I watch them all the ones that I see, the leaders that admit that they don't know stuff about what's happened. So just not to make everyone sad, just so everyone knows, last month was the lowest recorded employee happiness across the globe that we have ever seen in our database. So there's no getting away from that. But there's still lots of clients that are pushing above that and actually doing very well on employee happiness. But the one thing that I've noticed the CEOs that do really well are the ones that are just saying, I get it. This is how you're feeling. This is what we can work on, and this is what we can't. Like, we can't control when Boris is going to change dates or lockdowns or open this up or close that down. But what we can do is say that you can have the flexibility to work from home for the next 3 years if that's what you need, and so on. And I think I've definitely observed the leaders that are just more open and admit when they don't know what next year is going to look like, have a higher employee happiness. And because we know that leads through to performance, I think there's going to be, I think that's what 2021 is going to be about. I think the really good leaders that have led well in 20 are going to, their business is going to do do well in 2021 for the good work that they've put in.
Does anyone else have a view on that in terms of leadership?
Well, on your point, I would say, you know, I spent 30 years in corporate business, including CEO and COO roles in quite large organizations, and I became an expert at hiding my feelings. So, and you know, you suffer the consequence of that. Okay, I was lucky that I didn't get seriously ill, but I can look back on that. And it's also very important, I think, that when we're talking about traditional approaches, we don't blame people. You know, they've just handled life the way that they've learned themselves. You know, so they're a product of their own environment. So it's not about finger pointing and saying you're wrong, you don't have a future. It's saying now we've got so much more information available to people. There is stuff here underpinned by science which you can believe in. Because there are many leaders out there who feel so let down by the past theories that they have bought into and haven't worked for them, that they need support themselves. So none of this is about blame. It's just saying now is the perfect time for major change. And if we had any doubts, COVID should have pushed us absolutely in that direction.
Yeah. So shall we open it out to the rest of the group? If you want to turn your videos on, ask a question, or if you're shy, stick it in the chat. If you've got a question for any of us, that would be great, and join in this conversation.
I can see Becca Cox is literally brain whirring from where I'm sitting. I feel like there's a big question coming.
Get yourself off mute, Becca.
My question was actually just going to be, what did you enjoy the most about writing the book?
Good question. I got it's time, isn't it? That basically we're all busy. We think we're all busy all the time, don't we? Run from one Zoom call to the next email. You get back to your desk, there's about 1 million emails. You're like, oh God. Actually taking time out. So both Clive and Louisa, I got to interview. All the interviews are on the podcast, so I got to just 5 or 6 questions with all these amazing people and just listen and let it just like seep in. So that was the best bit, because if you'd have asked me to do that, I would have said I wouldn't have had enough time to go and just sit and listen to 50 people that are incredible in their field. So actually I'd just encourage everyone to do that. And I think that's how I met Christine, because Christine's reached out to lots of people in the business world in her career, just asking them if they can meet. And I think I would do more of that now. It's amazing how many people you contact that you don't know that will say, well, they will give you half an hour of their time. And I think I would just maybe go with a couple of questions to people and just sit and listen. that was really fun to be able to do that.
Becca, have you got a book in you?
Unlikely. Let's see.
So you're going to write another one, Matt?
Oh, what I'm trying to do at the moment is convince Clive to write book 2. And my thinking is, because it's called happiness, because the whole thing is, and I hope everyone here joins the Happiness in Humans community. Book 1's just supposed to be like the catalyst and the spark to get people interested in this subject. So, and even if Clive turns me down, maybe it's a series of books that's written by the community, not necessarily me. So I'm being a politician here and not answering your question, because I need to get to Christmas and just chill out before I answer your question. But the more I thought about it, wouldn't it be great if we were a community of people that wrote books on similar subjects, that we all owned our own books, but maybe we're all like, going back to like the quantum stuff that Clive was talking about, we don't have to be a publishing house, do we? We don't have to think in that way, but maybe our field of vision and the thing that excites us is creating a better world of work. And maybe we all just post books as part of the Happiness in Humans community, and they're all still separate. We can do what they want, but they become a series of letters almost on the world of work, which is only something I thought of yesterday, and then WhatsApp Clive, and Clive said, I'll think about it.
I'll take that as a yes.
I feel like I'm being proposed to in public here now. You're not going to put a ring on my finger, you bet.
We used to work with one of our biggest clients used to be Selfridges, and I learned a lot from the MD, Simon Forster. He was, if he wanted, this is bad advice, you shouldn't do this, but if he wanted to do something, he used to just phone the press and tell them that they were doing it, because they own the road behind Selfridges where people were. It was before click and collect seemed obvious to everyone, but not everyone on the team thought that Selfridges should do click and collect. It was, maybe that's not Selfridges thing, which seems crazy now. So he just phoned the press and said they were doing it, and then he was like, oh, the press are writing about it, there's nothing we can do. So I think that sometimes putting these things out in public are good.
By the way, Matt, I have accepted in principle.
Oh,
Matt, we should have answered this question much earlier, but Philip is asking, what's your definition of happiness?
Well, that was the first bit of the book. I had to work out what blooming hell happiness is, and I don't think anyone can answer that. What happiness to me, so in our database, what makes everyone happy is slightly different, but there are core themes. So HR professionals, which a lot of people are on here, they're the most unhappiest profession in our database, which obviously is a bit of a surprise, but I think so the thing that makes HR professionals happy is impact. And you would assume that was the same as every role, wouldn't you? But for HR professionals, if they don't feel that their work is having an impact, they get unhappy very quickly. For me, if the question is directed at me, it's freedom. But there's ranges of it. If you read all the literature, obviously I didn't read every single bit, but as much as I could, going back to Confucius, I think if you decode all the different fancy languages that the Greeks and the Italians and and everyone uses, I think you're talking about the definition of happiness breaks down into 4 areas. So like one, which is mood, which is most people think of happiness of. They think of like light
emotions.
Yeah. So you got mood, you've got purpose, you've got flow. Lots of people in sport talk about flow a lot. And the 4th one, the book was going to be called The 4th Dimension of Happiness at one point, but nobody liked it other than me, and it must be because I'm a bit of a geek. But because there's not many books. So our data in the data chapter, spoiler alert coming up, the number one thing across the 500,000, I took a sample of 500,000 employees. The thing that in our database, it's the highest is relationships. It's the importance of relationships at work. But weirdly, even if you go to like the latest stuff of like the positive psychologists, a lot of them on the West Coast of America, they still talk, a lot of happiness is talked about from an individual state, not from a group state. And even when we talk about gross national happiness and stuff like that, there are people who talk about it, but there's not as much literature and so on and so on. So I think that's why I was going to call it the 4th dimension of happiness. But when you decode all the sophisticated language that the academics use, they're all using different versions of those 4 things. So that I was trying to give my personal definition of freedom and what we see in all the people way smarter than me that they talk about it from.
And in positive psychology, they often talk about flourishing, don't they, to encompass those 4 kind of areas.
Yeah.
Or eudaimonia, you know, that feeling of contentment, rather than, which I think is why happiness often gets confused with just that feeling of being really happy emotion.
Yeah.
Which isn't what you're talking about.
No, and I know for a fact, because some of them have told me, this book has upset some positive psychologists that see the goal of happiness is always to be high happiness, but it's just not what this book is supposed to be. Rooted in our data as the cornerstone, and I just don't think that is a healthy or the right way to go about it. A lot of people who first got into it were all about everyone being happy all the time, but I think that's actually going to create unhappiness by trying to always feel like that. So I have upset a couple of people. It is a mix of data science and philosophy, and obviously my own views on it, but I just can't. I'm always want to be open-minded, but I can't currently see their view on it. But I mean, not everyone's going to love your book, are they?
But most people would agree that even if you agree it's better to be mostly happy, there would still be some proportion of the reality of the human condition is that we're going to have some unhappiness, because you know, back to your point, Clive, about the spiritual, we'll talk about the light and the dark, you know, for instance, because we have to have the dark in order to know the light.
Yeah.
And the happiness only comes partly because we know what unhappiness is.
Yeah, but if you take like the Serena Williams and the tennis and this kind of stuff, I think that's where the unhealthiness comes from, because you will like win something, don't you? And you think, oh, I'm going to be happy. And then you're not happy. And then you're on a downward spiral of thinking, wow, why am I not happy? I've got everything in my life.
Yeah.
So
our brain spends twice as much time processing threat and survival issues than it does processing happiness and growth opportunity. And that's for a good reason. You just take sadness as one of the survival emotions. Sadness is there to allow us to withdraw and heal, so the body can go through a process of rebalancing. If we genuinely feel sad and somebody is telling us we should feel happy, 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 we are denying ourselves the opportunity to go through that healing process. So it's nonsense. Yeah. It's not achievable to be in a state where we're permanently happy, unless maybe you're a Tibetan monk that spends about 7 or 8 hours a day meditating.
There's an incredible book called The Truth Pixie by Matt Haig. It's one of the first books principally written to educate children on mental health. But there's a whole point in there about how you can't feel up unless you felt down, and you can't feel down unless you felt up. And it's even helped me, because now when I feel sad, I just think, oh, I'm just feeling sad so I can feel happy.
Yeah.
At another point.
Yeah, sadness is just regrouping.
It's an interesting point for people working in HR and in business, because, you know, in terms of managing people's response to stuff going on. And Christine, I'm interested, because with your rewards background, obviously, how does that work? Because you're sort of always trying to give them the positive, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, there is difficulty in that. I feel, you know, you are dealing with, like, you're trying to find, I guess, a good balance for people with regards to how you reward them. You know, what speaks to people, I think. But I think what's most important is that, you know, when someone is working hard and is performing really well and is giving their all and going above and beyond, you know, it is important to really show that you appreciate what they're doing by, you know, recognizing that, you know, it helps them to feel more motivated in their work and to reward them correctly. I think for me, you know, with the experience I've had, I find it's just important to make sure that people are fairly paid in the organization. They are, you know, at the right level where they should be, because that ultimately makes you feel more motivated to be doing the work that you're doing, because you know, being fairly treated in the organization. I think, you know, besides that, obviously that's why I also enjoy the the well-being side of things, I feel, you know, it all ties in with well-being, benefits, reward. Like, it all should tie in for the employee. They should be able to feel like the environment they're working in, you know, fosters that culture of well-being. They have the tools available to them to be able to, you know, deal with things that are worrying them. For example, if people are having problems with finances, for instance, you know, there's a tools out there available for them to be properly educated on, you know, financial well-being. I think, you know, in these uncertain times, there is that worry of a money worry, and that does cause a bit of anxiety at work. And I think if people are educated in the right way on, you know, their finances and how to manage that, how to be in control, how to have that sense of security over your finances, and having the tools available at work to learn more about it, and to have, I guess, also it's important to have like mental health first aiders, where people know who to reach, who to get in touch with to get the help they need with things that they are that they're dealing with. And yeah, and I think it's important to help people reach, for leaders to help people reach you know, their goals and what their financial goals are, what their needs are. I think we need to find ways to speak to people, because everyone's at a different stage in their career, in their in their goals, and I think we need to find ways to speak to people at each stage in their career.
Thanks, Christine. Philip, you've got a comment. Do you want to come on and talk about it? Do you want to unmute yourself and make your comment, or?
I'm happy to talk about that one, Louisa.
Okay.
If Philip unmutes, that's fine as well. I think this goes back to Clive's point around. Oh, Philip's here. Hi, Philip.
Yeah. Hi.
Do you want to?
Sorry, I was just having some trouble with my internet.
No.
Yeah, it was just something I picked up. Just something I picked up earlier in the week, actually. Not that the CIPD did a survey, and they found that in executive bonuses, shareholder value was valued at 42 times any employee measure. I just thought that was not surprising, but quite interesting. And maybe it's time for us to think a little bit outside of the box.
What would that look like?
Well, I think to give more value to employee measures, employee metrics within organisations, such as engagement, well-being, and these sort of things, which again we know correlate with long-term sustainability of the business, and profitability of the business.
I think, Philip, there's a link here back to Clive's point earlier around like what structures are and what sits around a company, because the happiness index we're about to convert to being a B Corp. And for those that don't know about B Corps, it's a different way of running your business. But what I didn't realise about B Corps is it changes the article of associations of your business legally. And so the main legal requirement of the board and so on is profit. But the article of association actually change it to include community and planet in there.
Yeah.
So I think there's two ends to this, like educating people. So like the weather analogy I used earlier, so that CEOs know that bad employee happiness now is going to result in bad share price later down the line, which is, there's a 28-year study in the book on that, which is an education thing for CEOs for people to know. But there's also that structural element that at the end of the day, that's how CEOs justify it, isn't it? Why, when they drop 50,000 employees out, made redundant overnight, because they say, well, look, this is what I'm employed to do. This is what legally my requirement is to make profit. But once you attack it from the second angle as well, the legal angle, which is actually we're deciding we're going to make a change, which then will actually change the shareholders anyway, because if you're someone who believes in that kind of stuff, you're more likely to invest in that type of company. And then the shareholder base changes as well. If you're not, you're investing in other companies that you think profit's the only thing. So I definitely think there's two angles to attacking that, to attacking your really good point.
Yeah.
And Charlie, you had a point about this as well. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. Look, I guess I just observe at the moment where I don't think it's ever been so tough for colleagues working in the current environment. And I think one of the things we do get constant feedback on is almost a lack of opportunities around future career development. And you do want to be very realistic and honest with individuals. I guess what worries me a little bit at the moment is you'll have very good people who will still be working away on their career development, but there's perhaps others who will feel as though they've almost given up because they feel there's no opportunity that's going to emerge the other side of COVID. And that's just something that worries me at the moment. And for there to be such a differential between the employee and employer ranking on that, I found that a startling bit of insight. How was there such a big gulf between the two groups? Because I that was a stunning bit of insight in the book.
I could have a punt at speaking to that for a minute, if that's all right. I don't know how familiar people are with the Jungian Big Five personality types and such, but there's been some wonderful research around that. Someone called Daniel Nettle wrote an excellent book called Personality that I recommend people read. And one of the things they looked at there was how different personality types, for example, someone who's very extroverted or someone who's very introverted or someone who's very comfortable with risk versus someone who's very uncomfortable with risk. What they interestingly found is the chemical response, and Clive will be able to speak to this more acutely than I will, the actual chemical response in your brain was fundamentally different depending on where you sat in these scales. So someone who was very pro-risk would find the act of betting on black on a roulette table to be very different to someone who was anti-risk. They would have a completely different chemical payload. What this means, to your point, Charlie, is that if we think about employers, they are likely to be higher risk individuals. They've started businesses. Someone like Matt, who's stuck his neck out to do something new, they're probably people who are less responsive and scared of the idea of their next career move because they're probably innately more comfortable with risk. Whereas people who are joining organizations working up may well likely be someone who's more nervous about that. I'd be interested in other people's thoughts on it, but I think we have to bear in mind here, to Christine's point earlier, is doing what works for people. And people are very, very different, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
I'm conscious of time and a couple of people have got to go. Is there anything burning for any of us? Otherwise, Matt, would you like to wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for everyone for coming on. I appreciate how busy everyone is and how crazy the world is. So thank you for everyone that's just taken this time out today. I just massively appreciate it. And obviously Louisa, Rob, Christine and Clive for giving their expert opinion. I just hope that this has been a little catalyst. I hope lots of people join the Happiness and Humans community and that we can just continue this conversation, because I just think this area is so still at the early days. Like, I hope that people in 5 years' time will just pick up my book and go, that was a load of rubbish. What's the point of that? Like, why did people not know that? Do you know what I mean? When you pick something else up like a few years later and it just seems so out of date. I'm hoping that we can just keep all pushing this on together. So thanks. That's all I want to say. And if I don't see you before then, and this, like, as this little Christmas tree says here, have a good Christmas.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.